November 5th, 2025. It's only been a few weeks since I got back into action after being kidnapped for months, and I'm still not used to it. This new darkness envelops the city. The world has always been gloomy, but violence seems to be rising. The culture war appears to be intensifying, and the world increasingly resembles a dystopia from Alan Moore.
That's right, detective. While you were playing Kidnap,
It turns out I was playing...
here in the real world things happened? And where were you lying down, resting and gagged?
You know, I wasn't there by choice, right?
Several television hosts were fired, and a crime targeted a right-wing influencer. And the United States is invading itself.
What do you mean by invading itself? Yes.
Literally, as you heard, they're sending troops into their cities. The good news is I'm already getting paid.
Huh? Just a little?
Just a little. I was able to buy this printer, which comes with a radio and a flashlight, so we don't have to pay 18 pesos for each print anymore. Yes, I bought it on credit, 90 months with no interest. What would interest be? He says, no way, it has interest. I bought it from Salinas Pliego.
His interest rates are so high, I don't get why he avoids taxes. But let's stay positive, young man. We have our cleverness. And that printer...
with radio and flashlight, 90 months with interest.
Radio and flashlight at 90 months with interest. We can solve today's case. And it seems like we're living a reality very close to what happened in the story of B for Vendetta. We're becoming increasingly accustomed to giving up our freedom. Violence seems to rule the streets, and fear seems to be the main motivation behind every action.
Interesting, we're releasing this video on November 5th.
Join me as we solve this case, which I call
A Future Like Tifora Trumpet. A young man distressed. A distressed young man. Why did I have to be the one to record?
Was the singer more expensive? Chapter 1. A fascist story.
When did we start adding chapters?
I got the idea from a YouTube channel hosted by a good-looking but arrogant guy. It's worth it since we need to organize this video well because there's a lot of information. Let's get started. Alan Moore began developing 5 for 5 Vendetta in the early 80s during Margaret Thatcher's conservative rule in Great Britain, and the world faced nuclear holocaust threats. Since the era's two main powers, the United States and the Soviet Union kept developing and amassing more weapons of mass destruction, continually threatening each other, in a period that would be known as the Cold War, which was a time when no one attacked each other directly.
Because they had their cards in defense mode.
Give me my magnifying glass back. I regret lending it to you.
No.
They'd say, hey, I have these nuclear weapons, and the other country would reply, oh, I have these too.
Yeah, the United States and the Soviet Union were sizing each other up. Their strength. In this political climate, Alan Moore wrote 5 for 5 Vendetta, a story where Great Britain, sunk in fear, decides to turn to a fascist government led by a party called Norse Fire to shield them from the nuclear holocaust affecting the rest of the world.
The comic and movie differ greatly. The comic addresses nuclear holocaust fears, while the movie has Norse Fire create panic in Great Britain by secretly releasing a virus they developed. A change that makes much more sense given the time when the movie was released. Since a couple of years earlier, the United States had faced a series of anthrax outbreaks. Both stories share one thing: the comic and movie of 5 for 5 Vendetta have very different elements. But at the center of both stories is the idea that fear can be used as a weapon.
In the comic, the government exploits nuclear warfare. In the movie, it's a virus. In both, the aim is to keep power. What do you think? Is there any truth to this?
And it turns out that in the mid-50s, the United States government funded research in which psychologists studied how fear could be used to manipulate people's behavior, later known as shock theory. And the premise is simple. When people are scared, they tend to be more easily influenced and make worse decisions. In fact, it's a tactic that's found in CIA interrogation manuals, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, the Mexican police definitely get it.
Economists like Milton Friedman used this tactic during Pinochet's dictatorship to get people to accept policies against their interests.
Yes, that Milton Friedman, who nowadays appears as a cartoon character in a series that's broadcast on an Argentine channel. That's why in 5 for 5 Vendetta, it's fear that makes the population follow a repressive, authoritarian government. Come on, look at him. He seems like he wanted to study art but got rejected, and he'll probably run away to Argentina someday.
And that's something we can also see at play today. Since the current government of the United States seems to be doing everything possible to spread a narrative of fear and confrontation among its population. Fear of immigrants, trans people, and especially being woke? This concept is losing meaning and now mostly serves as an imaginary enemy for everything. Its goal is to cause fear, and it basically means whatever they want it to mean. While Trump uses artificial intelligence, generated posts to divide and agitate the public, like his recent one during the latest protests, he also faces opposition on October 18th, No King's Day.
What I'm throwing at them is yes.
It's exactly that, and it might seem like a joke, but at those levels, every move is calculated. What do they gain?
If we're busy fighting cultural battles with each other, we're less likely to unite and ask, hey, why is that millionaire paying less in taxes?
At the same time, they use fear and rejection of woke as a kind of lubricant to push policies on us that aren't in our best interest. When a society is in shock and fearful, it naturally seeks a savior figure, like in 5 for 5 Vendetta. Originally, the leader of the Norse Fire Party was Chancellor Adam Susan, while in the film they changed the name to Adam Sutler.
Yeah, because Sutler sounds more villainous than Susan. By the way, we haven't used the printer's radio and flashlight.
Why would you want a flashlight in a printer?
I want to remind you that the months come with interest. I intend to use the flashlight and the damn radio. Alright, let's continue. In the movie, Adam Sutler is shown as tough and authoritarian, while in the comic he's also authoritarian but tries to connect with people and be more charismatic.
Authoritarian leaders vary, but luckily we have a guide to identify governments with fascist tendencies. In his 1995 essay Eternal Fascism, the semiotician and philosopher Umberto Eco talked about the characteristics that a fascist government has.
A government doesn't need all these traits to be fascist, but fascism generally leans this way. Among them is the cult of tradition, that is, promising to return to a glorious past. The rejection of modernism. The fear of those who are different, usually immigrants.
If they let them in, are they going to be the devil? They're criminals, vicious, violent.
The obsession with believing there's a plot against them. And a selective populism where the leader claims to represent the people, but only the right people.
Exactly, young man. Concerned. These leaders see people as either good or bad. Some people side with good, others with evil. The leader claims to represent the true people. This exaggerated praise of leaders, whether left or right, often involves nearly comical lies. For example, Vladimir Putin is seen shirtless or supposedly recovering ancient vases while swimming. The Turkmenistan dictator releases videos of himself cycling and hitting targets clearly without editing tricks. There's also Nicolás Maduro, who claimed Hugo Chavez appeared to him as a little bird.
As a little bird?
Huh? Like a bird. That's how sound effects are. Trump frequently exaggerates or lies about his physical and mental health. Recently, he told reporters he did well on an intelligence quotient test called the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. The problem is that this test doesn't actually measure your intelligence quotient, it measures your cognitive decline or if you're developing Alzheimer's. I mean, one of the questions is to draw a clock. Any healthy person, regardless of intelligence, could pass it easily. Did you like the movie?
On the physical side, something funny happened too.
The White House officially stated, Trump is 1.89 meters tall and weighs 101 kilograms, which is the height and weight that Chris Hemsworth has had in some Thor movies. The point is that in recent years, Trump and his allies have managed to craft a story where he consistently appears strong, intelligent, and capable. The leader of the good people whose crimes are nothing but slander from the opposition. There are even pastors who have mentioned him as a messenger from God. Let it be clear to you, often and in easily verifiable things. But he does it because he knows that the truth is not in the facts, but in how the facts are perceived.
Chapter 2. Freedom of expression.
In 5 for 5 Vendetta, Louis Protheroe is known as the 5 Ois of London in the movie and the 5 Ois of Fate in the comic. In both stories, his role is simply to be the government's official news source. For example, when 5 destroys the Old Bailey at the film's start, Protheroe and his team falsely claim it was a planned demolition, and they called in several experts to say that the building was in poor condition. Now, our northern neighbor doesn't have a single news channel like in the story B for Vendetta.
Fox News is sort of like that.
Trump is tall, heavy, with good skin and hair. He's handsome, let's be honest.
Caroline Levitt, spokesperson for his administration, handles all media questions, and she frequently insults reporters and conveniently dodges questions, like when she was recently asked why. Trump appointed his inexperienced son-in-law Jared Kushner to mediate Middle East peace.
think it's frankly despicable that you're trying to suggest that it's inappropriate for Jared Kushner, who is widely respected around the world, to strike a 20-point comprehensive detailed peace plan.
Her style is much like Trump's, aggressive, intimidating, confident, and gives the impression she answered without actually doing so. Her nickname, and I'm not joking, is Caroline.
If you know, you know.
Unfortunately, her job is getting easier. Previously, independent journalists decided which media outlets covered the White House, ensuring diverse opinions. But not anymore, because now it's the government itself that decides who covers them. So they have already banned some media outlets they considered hostile, like Associated Press, and given space to much friendlier outlets. Girl, they asked this question in the Oval Office, listen.
The Pentagon.
For its part, took this a step further since it asked the media to sign a document in which they agree that every note would be reviewed. Media outlets such as Associated Press, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Cable News Network, and Fox News all refused to sign this, because that would give the Pentagon complete control over the news, consolidating more and more of a single narrative, just like we saw in 545 Vendetta. Do you really think it was necessary to print the logos of each one of them? Ah, right, months with interest?
Exactly.
But I think the point when everyone started talking about freedom of speech was when the crime against Charlie Kirk happened. Charlie Kirk was a conservative content creator known for debating college students. And regularly, there are two narratives that we hear about him. Conservatives argue he is a martyr for freedom, merely expressing his ideas respectfully and legally. So nowadays, for some reason, they even use artificial intelligence to recreate his voice in churches.
First, I want you to know I'm fine, not because my body is fine, but because my soul is secure in Christ. I knew the risks of standing up in this cultural moment, and I'd do it all over again.
Meanwhile, more liberal people say he was horrible because of his views. He had misogynistic, racist, backward views, but he clearly didn't deserve what happened to him. In the United States, the Constitution protects all viewpoints, even if we dislike guns.
Don't forget about the guns.
However, after this crime, everyone started talking about what the limits of freedom of speech are or should be, each side trying to censor what they don't like. But what exactly does the law say about freedom of speech? That clearly explains everything that happened between the government and the comedians when Stephen Colbert's and Jimmy Kimmel's shows were cancelled after they criticized Trump. This instantly reminded me of a scene in 545 Vendetta where comedian Gordon Dietrich is fired for mocking Chancellor Adam Sutler. It may seem exaggerated at first, but this act is actually close. Let's check the law. The First Amendment of the United States Constitution lets everyone express any opinion without fear of government persecution.
It just protects you from the government. Which means that any private company could fire you for saying or posting something if they feel it affects them, even if you posted it on your personal social media.
In this case, at first we could say that the firing of Stephen Colbert and Jimmy Kimmel was something legal because it was a decision made by the companies. But here's the plot twist. If there was government intervention,
You just have to follow the money trail.
Paramount, which broadcasts Colbert, was seeking a multi-million-dollar merger with Skydance. But to do that, they needed the approval of Brendan Carr, the head of the Federal Communications Commission, the agency that regulates telecommunications in the United States. Here's what happened. Colbert mocked Trump, Paramount fired him right away, and their merger was quickly approved.
Oh, it's a miracle.
And in Kimmel's case, it was even worse because just hours before his show was cancelled, Brendan appeared on a podcast and said the following.
Is this going to be the easy way or the hard way? These companies can find ways to change behavior and take action on Kimmel. Will this mean more work for the Federal Communications Commission? Go ahead.
A few hours later, Nexstar, which airs Jimmy Kimmel, released a statement against him and urged Disney to remove him from the air. It should be noted that Nexstar was looking to merge with Tejna, another deal that also had to be approved by Brendan Carr. If you notice, the dates are quite a coincidence. Fortunately, his show did come back.
Due to massive Disney boycotts and millions lost, the company renewed Kimmel's show. But pay close attention to the difference. As consumers, we use our wallets to show companies what we want and don't want to see.
And there, yes, we are all free to have an opinion, whatever it may be. And something very different is that the United States government is using government permits to pressure companies and thus silence messages that are uncomfortable for them. Clearly, this goes against freedom of speech. You see, this battle is happening in many places.
Social media. For example, Elon Musk, owner of X, backed Trump during his campaign. Yes, the one with the Roman salute. Mark Zuckerberg, owner of Meta, went from removing Trump's verified account to supporting him through videos and donations. Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon and the Washington Post, censored the editorial board to prevent support for Kamala in the elections. Recently, Vice President J.D. Vance said that with TikTok, Americans' brothers would alter its algorithm to restrict certain messages. We've already seen this, as some topics like the situation in Ohio didn't show up in TikTok searches. Yes, Ohio is like their version of Tlaxcala, but things happen there too.
I mean, who's in Ohio, you know? In Ohio?
How about you give it to me instead? Tulupa? It seems companies generally want to impress Tan.
That's how these companies made million-dollar donations to his inauguration fund, which raised far more than any previous ones. That's why several media outlets claim that we're entering a kind of technocracy where these tech companies play a very important role. Who holds the power? Universities also aren't safe, as Trump is blackmailing them and threatening to cut their funding, unless they're loyal to his government's ideology and follow his rules. This includes eliminating groups that oppose conservative ideas, and they are also asked to teach gender as something biological and not as a social construct.
Ignoring that gender is one thing and sex is another.
Most academics and universities have fortunately refused to sign this pact. However, we don't know how long this will last, as they all rely on public funding. Not only to exist, but also to continue their research, from social to medical. Similarly, the organization Turning Point, led by Charlie Kirk, who supposedly loved freedom, has identified and doxed many university professors who allegedly give controversial messages in their classes. Such is the case of Mark Prey, a professor specialized in researching anti-fascist movements, who was forced to go to Spain after direct threats against him and his family.
Just like in 5 for 5 Vendetta, where the Chancellor bans certain works of art, such as the musical piece that 5 used to blow up the Old Bailey. Trump has also opposed museums, asking the Smithsonian Museum to stop showing some collections on topics like slavery.
It's quite ironic that a government now censoring words and ideas originally rose to power by discussing censorship woke. But the truth is that it's all part of a plan. Chapter 3. A violent outlook. The incident with Charlie Kirk not only made all of us, left and right, ask ourselves, what are the limits of freedom of speech? It was instantly used as a media weapon. Trump released this official White House message before the person responsible for what happened to Charlie Kirk was caught.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today.
Notice that instead of promoting peace and unity, he used the moment to attack his enemies.
The same thing happened with several figures from his administration, like the Republican Nancy Mace, who said on X, "It's time to bring back the death penalty." He probably assumed the culprit would be an immigrant or trans person.
But 48 hours later, when it was revealed that the alleged culprit was a young white man named Tyler Robinson, Charlie Kirk changed his stance and said he wished we had prayed for him. I mean, he basically used this meme.
However, many conservative media outlets heavily emphasize this. Tyler having a trans roommate, a relationship with her, or a left-wing political leaning. It should be mentioned that up to now, it is still not 100% clear what Tyler's motivation was. Even the police say the roommate was always very willing to help with the investigation. Even so, many media outlets are still implying she was somehow involved in the crime. Recently, many conservative media outlets have connected terrible crimes, especially those that often occur in schools there. If you know what I mean with trans people. In fact, Donald Trump's son even publicly said the following.
The transgender movement is, per capita, the most violent and domestic threat in America, probably in the whole.
However, the data shows that of 4,147 such incidents since 2018, only 4 were committed by trans people. Over 4,000 incidents we can't mention on YouTube without risking demonetization in under 10 years. Are you sure, young man?
Yes, no, I'm just as impressed. I mean, not even Gotham City has those numbers anymore. For sure, Batman would be terrified.
Despite the facts, many online still believe the narrative that trans people are dangerous. That's why crimes against them have doubled in the last 4 years. All of this is used to promote the idea that the radical left, represented by movements like lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender anti-fascism and feminism, are the enemies to defeat. But again, the data says otherwise. For example, Anti-Defamation League published a report analyzing the past 10 years of this crime type and made determinations. Most are committed by far-right individuals. It may seem like a huge disparity, but remember, this extreme right goes far beyond what Trump or Charlie Kirk represent. There are 165 active organizations like the Comedy and Singing Club in the United States. A couple months ago while researching for this video.
Actually, when I was doing the research a couple of months ago, you were kidnapped. And gagged.
Does it make a difference? We found another source from the government itself that confirmed this information. The source was mysteriously deleted days after the Charlie Kirk incident, as reported by media outlets like The Guardian. Why did they delete this a few days after the Charlie incident? Because it simply doesn't fit the narrative they want to sell, in which there is a great enemy to defeat and desperate measures must be taken to do so. This is evident in the controversy over the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, or Big and Beautiful Law in Spanish. Yeah, it sounds like a country song title. In Mexico, it's called the Good, Pretty and Cheap Law, but it's actually quite shady, so be cautious. It's about a law proposed by the Trump administration, which puts the country in debt by $3 trillion.
That's how you say it in Spanish.
I've never needed to use more than billions before.
This mom's flashlight maxes out at 30 watts.
And Guinaldo only receives up to 1,000 pesos.
Son of Tucha, and you still choose Guinaldo.
Huh? Let's not get off track. We should ask where the money goes. Some funds go to military contracts, prisons, security and border patrols, which is something this sector of the population loves, since they live with the idea that their country is under attack.
But there's also a trick, because it turns out that another large part of this budget goes to tax cuts for the two wealthiest sectors of the population, among whom are Trump's millionaire friends.
The poorest people will pay higher taxes and much higher insurance premiums. This will ultimately make the poor poorer and the rich richer. At the time of this recording, the United States government is shut down because there is one part of the government that wants to push this law and another that does not. So since they couldn't reach an agreement, they went on strike.
But in the end, what does it matter? It's not our country.
He's right, and many comments mention it, but unfortunately, what happens in the United States affects us all. First, the Big Beautiful Bill eliminates support for renewable energy and instead strongly backs fossil fuels. Keep in mind, Trump and his administration don't believe in global warming.
Clearly, he doesn't have a printer with a radio and flashlight to check the weather every Sunday and see temperatures rising.
Something that will have disastrous global consequences. His Secretary of Health, Robert Kennedy, doesn't believe in vaccines, which could make it easier for diseases that had already been eradicated in the world to resurface. Halting universities and their research will seriously affect everyone. And recently the news broke that Trump gave the green light to start conducting nuclear tests again after 30 years. Trump's rhetoric affects us significantly because it resonates not just with Americans but also in many other countries. Now we have candidates like Eduardo Verastegui in Mexico launching political campaigns with similar values and ideals. And also dangers. What dangers? Basically the normalization and rise of movements. To those who love it, but do they really love Trump's rhetoric? A leaked chat from the Young Republicans group recently showed them glorifying World War II crimes.
What can we say without getting demonetized?
They also referred to people of African descent in a highly derogatory way. And the case of a congressman who had a United States flag with a swastika in his office went viral. Now imagine all of that happening in your country. And look, I always read comments from people who say things like, "Oh yeah, that's great. We could use a Trump here in Escala."
But seriously, let's look at ourselves. Really.
Unfortunately, Trump at this point seems to be inevitable since for his fans, every attack against him is proof that the powerful want to bring him down. When the truth is that he surrounds himself with the most powerful people in the world, maybe the only thing that could bring him down would be his involvement in the whole scandal with Jeffrey Epstein. Since it is known that he appears multiple times in these files, but we can't know for sure in what way he appears, Congress needs 218 votes to fully release the corruption files.
They have 217 votes so far, since many of Trump's allies are voting against releasing them. Elita Grijalva's policy would reportedly be the 218th vote to release the files. However, House Leader Mike Johnson, a close Trump ally, has refused to swear her in, citing the government shutdown as an excuse.
Why didn't you print Mike Johnson's photo?
We're out of magenta.
But we print in black and white. I know, but if we don't print anything in color...
That's why I got excited and printed in color.
And what did you print?
A circulatory system?
And why? I don't know. What will happen?
Well, we have to buy more ink. It's more expensive than the printer.
With the world, it's hard to know, but the situation doesn't look good.
Nor does the printer.
Talking about these topics really helps. Because fascism doesn't happen overnight, but rather by giving in little by little, with universities being silenced, with media outlets being blackmailed, and with people little by little getting used to living in a perpetual state of conflict. The worst part of all is that we're not living an original story. We've seen this before. Alan Moore and many other people have already written about this, and here we are repeating the mistakes of the past. Fascism doesn't always appear with black boots and red flags. Sometimes it offers easy answers to very complex problems. And the saddest part is that it works. It works because we're afraid. It works because companies would rather have even more money than do what's right. And it works because looking the other way is easier than resisting. That's why it's important that today, more than ever, we stay attentive and alert to the kind of discourse they're selling us, not just in the United States, but also in our own countries. Since governments that present themselves as both left-wing and right-wing are taking actions to centralize power, actions that take away our power as citizens. Today is November 5th, and I guess it's the perfect date to remember that people shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should fear the people. I'm Detective Go the Geek Monitor.
And I'm the young man concerned about the printer.
For this occasion, the case is yours.